Hello, this is Joseph Foster, and I'm about to do a presentation on World War II. And this is going to be a pre-war presentation, so we're not actually going to get to the official beginning of the war today, but we're going to see the groups of people and the timeline of what actually started the war itself. And hard to believe this starts almost 2,000 years ago. Okay, the lead up to World War II started almost 2,000 years ago, and I'm going to prove that to you. But first of all, in remembrance to all the children around the world killed by U.S. bombs. Today, over 67 children will be found dead in Gaza. And many more will be found in Lebanon. Even more will be found in Yemen. And even more will never be found because they were vaporized. Some will slowly die, an agonizing slow death all alone from their wounds because a building collapsed on top of them. We are all complicit, we are all accountable. We may have not dropped the bomb, but we sure as hell didn't stop it from being built. Those children will be allowed in God's kingdom. I can't say the same for us. And just a disclaimer before I start. If you have your children with you, if you're watching with the family or whatnot, if you want your children to see the harshest realities this world has to offer, you can watch this with them. But if you want to not expose your children to those harsh realities quite yet, I would not have them watch the rest of this presentation because it's going to get into the nitty-gritty of just what's the reality of the people that own this world. You know, what they do and what they have done and what we can prove and what we know. Okay? So just going to give that disclaimer. Continuing on. This is Khazaria. Okay, this was a very, very serious empire before the last reset. So this basically was a very, very powerful country between 100 AD and I believe about 700 AD. Okay? So continuing on. The Khazar Empire, also known as the Khazar Khaganate, I think that's how you pronounce it, was a Turkic state that flourished, and now it was kind of a Turkic state, okay? So what I should have wrote is it was a Jewish Turkic state, and it was also kind of part of Asia too. But yeah, but a lot of people believe it was a Turkic state, so that's the official history that you'd get off of Google. It says it was a Turkic state, but I don't believe that it was mainly a Turkic state. I believe it was mainly a Jewish state. But continuing, was a Turkic state that flourished in the 7th to 10th centuries CE. So that would be the 7th to 10th centuries AD, pretty much. I believe CE is pretty much the same thing as AD, I'm pretty sure. Primarily in the Pontic Caspian steppe, encompassing parts of modern-day Russia, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan. And also little parts of Poland, too. It was a significant power in Eurasia, known for its strategic location, trade networks, and unique adoption of Judaism by its ruling elite. The origins and rise of Khazaria. The Khazars were in a way an offshoot of the Western Turkic Empire. They emerged as a distinct group following the collapse of the Western Turkic Khaganate in the mid 7th century. They consolidated their power in the Volga-Don steppes and expanded their influence across the Pontic Caspian region. Their rise was partly due to their military prowess and control of key trade routes, including parts of the Silk Road. The trade routes. Khazaria from 100 AD onward made a priority to control the trade routes going east to west. This was done using a variety of brutal methods. And we'll get into what those methods are. And what we need to understand first, before anything, is if you want to understand a group of people, try to understand their religion. Okay? Because around, I'd say about 80 to 90% of the people in our realm are religious. Okay? And what I've noticed just throughout my life and throughout doing research is that when you have a people of a certain religion, they all have a lot of matching traits that come with being a part of that religion. And you can kind of use that ideology and the traits of that religion to predict what those people will do and won't do. If you understand what I'm saying. So what I want to try to get you guys to understand is that when you're trying to understand a group of people and you're trying to understand why they think the way they do, first look at their religion, look at their tendencies, and look at their actions. Okay? Whenever you're trying to understand what somebody or a group of people is going to do next, you need to evaluate all of those things first. Okay? But continuing on, sorry about that. Just kind of a little rant. Who do the Khazarian Zionists worship? Zionism also came from Khazaria. Okay? Zionism is a very, very, very old thing. Okay? It's nothing new. 1. The spirits of Baal, which taught them Babylonian money magic. Lucifer, leader of the Elohim. So, Baal and the Elohim, to my understanding, aren't necessarily individual gods, but they're basically they're organisms or creatures that do not thrive in our realm. Okay, in our realm of understanding. So the human eye can only see approximately around 1 to 2% of what's actually in front of it. Okay? So we can only see 1 to 2% of everything that's in the room around us, including colors, including beings, including, the best way to explain this is if I send a text to somebody, okay, and the text is physically leaving my phone and physically traveling through the air to the other phone that I'm sending the text to. There is a dimension where that text is visibly leaving my phone and visibly going into the next phone that I'm contacting. Okay? So these waves are real things, okay? And everything, every signal, every signal, every phone call, every little thing that affects us that we can't see can be seen in another dimension, okay? Nothing is actually invisible. That's a myth. That's definitely not true. All right, continuing. And these beings exist in realms like that our signals exist in, that that the ether exists in, and other parts of this reality exist in. So that's why we can't see them, hear them, or feel them. Okay? Who are the Elohim? The Elohim are creatures that transcend dimensions and the ones who fused our second chromosomes. That's one reason why 95% of our DNA is considered useless junk DNA. Also, why we only use about 5 to 8% of our brains. Now, I'm not sure if that's necessarily true. The 5 to 8% of our brains is what's being used, but that's the official narrative, is 5 to 8%. I just believe a lot of our brain is on autopilot most of the time. Just making sure body functions are working properly, and we're not really consciously aware of that. So I'm not sure if this is necessarily 100% accurate, but for like the frontal cortex and like the pineal gland, that would only consist of about maximum about 20% of our brain, and I know that we use that when we're concentrating, and we use that when we're sensing a feeling of maybe something's not right. That's the part of our brain where that is coming from, I believe. They have led human development, and they have held human development in check for over the last 10,000 years. Now, who is Baal? Baal was a prominent deity in ancient Middle Eastern cultures, particularly among the Canaanites, Phoenicians, and related groups. He was primarily a storm god, associated with rain, fertility, and agriculture. In Canaanite mythology, Baal was often depicted as a powerful warrior, and was involved in epic battles with other deities, highlighting themes of life, death, and renewal. Google definition of Elohim. In Hebrew, Elohim is a word that can refer to God, gods, or even other spiritual beings. While it's a plural form, it's often used to refer to the one God of Israel, especially in the context of creation. The term can also be used to describe other deities, angels, or even human rulers and judges. Here's a more detailed explanation. Plural form, often singular meaning. While Elohim is grammatically plural, it is frequently used to refer to a singular God of Israel in the Hebrew Bible, particularly in Genesis. God of creation. Elohim is the first name for God used in the Bible, particularly in the creation story in Genesis 1:1. Not always singular. The term Elohim can also refer to other gods, as seen in some verses where it distinguishes Yahweh from the other Elohim, beyond the divine. Elohim can also be used to refer to other powerful beings such as angels or even human rulers and judges, highlighting their power and authority. So this is the definition off of Google. So this is the official definition for the Elohim. So the first definition was my definition, and this definition is Google's. Just so you get kind of both sides of the story. And I do really like how Google did explain this. Showing you that there could be as well a society of the Elohim, where it's just another species, or it could just be a couple of deities that are the controllers of the realm. We really don't know. Okay, the only people who actually know who the Elohim are and where they come from supposedly are the Khazarians, who we're talking about right now. They know the truth. This is a depiction of Baal. This is a man of probably either a Ashkenazi Jew or a Middle Eastern descent, just judging by the clothing, giving a child to Baal, which he's sacrificing it to Baal because the child's not coming back. That's one thing that the Khazarians do, is they do a lot of child sacrifice. And they say that they're sacrificing all these children to Baal, so that Baal will help them and protect them. Which I'll tell you what, if that all is true, Baal is doing a pretty damn good job of protecting these scumbags. I'll tell you that right now, because these people seem to not be able to be touched. Okay, the Khazarian Mafia is the most powerful establishment on the face of the earth. Okay? There's no more powerful establishment. This is other depictions of Baal. Just different depictions. I know the last one, he kind of had like a bear head, or kind of like a dog head kind of deal. But there are depictions, in carvings and walls, showing him in a different form, statues, and so on and so forth. So it seems like there's not just one comprehension of Baal, there's multiple. This is another carving, kind of similar to the one that was on the left here. And this looks like Baal with some sort of objects in his hands. And he's standing on top of what looks like a bowl. This is really interesting. So, it looks like there's some type of club in this hand. And there's some type of, plant-shaped spear going into the ground on this hand, I would guess. Alright, the Elohim. So the Elohim, as we talked about before, are sometimes depicted as angels with wings and so forth. So one thing I need you guys to understand, and I will prove in a future video, that there has been human skeletons found with wings and with horns and with one eye, and there's been also been humans that were depicted in old maps. They're called the Blemmy, and their faces were actually on their chests and stomach. Okay? So just when you see these pictures of humans with wings, don't think mythology. Okay? Think about history, because this is our history. It's people like this. Okay? They were very real, very alive, and they did a lot of very real things in our realm that we need to start to uncover to understand our true past. Okay? This is another depiction I thought was really cool. It's kind of a like a colorful, more really, I guess, trippy, you would call it, depiction of this deity. And this is another really, really cool depiction, just like the mountains, the snow, and just it being cold, the sky being dark, you can see the stars. I thought this was just an amazing picture. It shows a deity with wings, again, and with a sword in his hands. And it's showing a smaller, humanoid figure with no wings over here. Maybe that's encompassing the Elohim being on a pedestal watching over us as we're down below. Maybe that's what this picture could represent. Some other depictions. These are carvings that this one's a carving. And I believe these two are pictures that were drawn of this deity. History of Khazarian Zionism. So for Khazarian Zionists, if I use KZ, that's what that means, and KM is for Khazarian Mafia. And now you're kind of wondering, what's the difference? The Khazarian Zionists, in my opinion, this is my opinion only, they are the people of Khazarian society that went along with and didn't stop what the Khazarian Mafia was doing. Okay? So both the KZ and the KM believed in the same things, but the KM was the one those were the ones that were actually hurting people, as composed to the Khazarian Zionists that were kind of bystanders. That's how I've came to understand it. So in 100 AD, the KZ start disrupting the east to west trade routes by taking traders and their families. I should have put KM there. That's my bad, because when I originally wrote this, I kind of bunched the Khazarian Zionists and the Khazarian Mafia into one group. But as I continued on, I kind of realized that I should actually separate those two groups, and the only reason being is because in order to understand what happened in 100 AD to what's happening today and the connection between the two, you got to understand that both of these groups still exist. Okay? The Khazarian Zionists still exist, and the Khazarian Mafia still exist. Okay? So the Khazarian Zionists are kind of like the Eastern European citizens of Israel, who are they're not hurting anybody, but they're going along with what the Israelis are doing in Gaza, which those are all Khazarian Mafia in Gaza. Okay? So the people who are killing in Gaza are the Khazarian Mafia itself. Alright? There's a reason why there's very specific commanders that are in place in Gaza right now. Okay? Because they are Khazarian. They're not just Ashkenazi Jews or Sephardic Jews. And I have nothing against the Jewish people, by the way, guys. I have absolutely nothing against them. It's just, to understand the context of the truth of our past, you need to understand that the Jewish people were very heavily involved in all of this. Willingly or unwillingly. Okay? Now, as far as Gaza goes, the Khazarian Mafia is the one who's killing everybody. Okay? They are literally the ones slaughtering everybody. There's no there's no commanders that are involved with the genocide that aren't Khazarian Mafia, okay? So whenever you see kids getting blown up on TV, just remember the KM's behind it. 100 AD, the Khazarian Zionists start disrupting the east to west trade routes by taking traders and their families passing through the area. They would actually take a trader and their family that's traveling with them and house them, invite them in for food and drinks, and tell them to stay the night, and they would drug the drinks of the traders. Then they and their families would wake up strapped to a wall. They would torture the whole family to death and skin them alive and eat their raw meat for the adrenochrome, going in this order: father, mother, oldest child to youngest child. The youngest would always be the last to die. And this is how they learned who the suppliers were, who the buyers were, and all the information necessary to take the trade routes over for themselves. And they would even post as the people they killed, looking like them, talking like them, so they would try not to spook the buyers. But once you're in with the Khazarian Mafia, you don't get out alive ever. So these people who they were dealing with, once they dealt with them, they're stuck. Whether that be the buyers or whether that be the suppliers or the purchasers on the other side. Okay? So everybody involved with the KM, once they're involved with the KM, they're stuck. There's no going to the authorities. There's no, I don't want to do business with you anymore. There's no none of that. You do what they say, and that's that, or you and your family get skinned alive. That's how brutal these people are, okay? They are heartless, soulless. I think they're human. They definitely look like us, talk like us, and sort of act like us, but I don't know many people who could skin another person alive. I really don't. So, now, as far as them being people or not, I'm really not sure, but for right now, we're going to say they're people, okay? And they did this throughout all of Khazaria for so long. Eventually, they had all the trucks, all the routes, suppliers, and the buyers. They controlled all trade. Now, you're probably wondering, hey, Joey, why are you saying they had trucks? Why I'm saying they had trucks is because they had trucks, okay? And they had trains, and they had planes, and they had airships, and they had electrogravitic crafts, which we would call UFOs, that operate off electrostatic technology, changing the charge of the particles of the vehicle to get it to move different directions. So they had all that 2,000 years ago, okay? And I can prove all that, all right? In the future episodes, I will prove that to you guys. They've had all this stuff forever. They want you to think that a fish eventually crawled out of water, and that fish eventually somehow became something that could walk, and that thing that could walk somehow became a monkey, and that monkey somehow became a person, and these people somehow developed into us. That's not true. Evolution is a real thing, but not in the grand scheme of everything, okay? So, animals do evolve, but it's not like how they tell you it is. A fish does not grow legs and become a person over thousands of years. That's not how that works, okay? Not at all. There was an intelligent force or being of some sort that created us, okay? I would imagine they created the first of us with some type of computer program, I'd imagine, to design our eyes, our brains, our nerves, our bloodstreams, everything, because I'm sorry, it had to be an extremely sophisticated group or one of a species that created us. And that's the thing, too, is all these religions depict God as being a man. Okay? When it's kind of strange how the only givers of life are actually females. So, I know they're lying to us about our Creator and where we really come from. Just because none of it makes any sense. None of these religions make any sense. And I do respect people's faith. And I myself am very faithful. I pray 3 times a day. But whenever I do my prayer, I always say my Creator. I never say God or Lord or Jesus or any of that, because I'm not going to act like I know who created me, because I know everything they tell us is lies. But continuing on. The Khazarian Mafia. The Khazarian Mafia are the human overlords of Earth. They are made up of the 13 bloodlines of Cain, which Cain was he was kind of like one of the first people, as I understand, to be worshipped. So when depictions of Cain show a hairier man eating his children, okay? Disgusting stuff, okay? But I guess the Khazarians believe that Cain was one of the original people on this earth. And they do look at him as a deity, but I didn't classify him as a deity in this presentation just because what I have gathered from what Cain is, he seems more like a person than a deity. That's why I just put it as the 13 bloodlines of Cain and not the deity of Cain, if you know what I'm saying. And most of all, the other royal bloodlines as well. They are the bankers, the religious leaders. They are the human and drug traffickers of the highest ranks. Human and drug trafficking at the highest levels are all Khazarians. Okay? They want you to think that El Chapo, was controlling the drug trade, and he was controlling this, he was controlling that. He wasn't controlling shit. Okay? I could tell you that just throughout my life experience that the drug trade at the highest levels is controlled by white people. Okay? Usually Eastern European or of Jewish descent. Usually they're Khazarians, okay, of the highest ranks. And usually it is actually the billionaires that own everything else that also control the drug trade too. Because you got to realize something, okay? To stop drugs from flowing in this country would be so easy for the elites to do. They could strangle the flow of drugs in a heartbeat if they wanted to. And this has been proven, okay? And this has been proven by actually, ironically, the Mexican drug cartels. There was this former DEA agent, I can't think of his name right now. It kind of escapes me, but he was living in Mexico and he was actually a drug addict. And when he would purchase drugs from the cartel in the city that he lived in Mexico, he couldn't get opiates from the cartel. And the cartel told him that it was a death penalty for anybody who trafficked opiates into the city in Mexico, because the cartel didn't want a bunch of sick people. Alright? And you know what's crazy? This DEA agent was explaining that the cartel in this area where they had an embargo on any opiates, well, really heroin. I mean, if you could still get prescription pills if you needed them, but as far as like heroin and fentanyl went, in this city you couldn't get it in, you couldn't find it. Okay? And it was a death penalty for anybody selling or distributing it. So the cartel literally was able to completely embargo a substance from entering the city. Completely. Just by killing the people who were bringing it into the city. And I know that sounds crazy for a drug cartel to do that, but guys, the people in the drug cartels are humans too, okay? And, the ones that I have personally met, they were not very bad people, okay? There are very bad people in the cartels, okay? There are very bad people in the cartels, but not all of them are really that bad, okay? The bad guys are usually the guys giving the orders, not the guys taking them, all right? And that applies to almost every aspect of life, okay? But anyhow, that just proves that if a cartel can stop opiates from getting into a city, you bet your ass the United States surveillance apparatus can stop anything from coming across that border if they want to. But all the drug traffickers of the lower ranks have to pay a tax up to all the billionaires of this realm. Okay, so all the billionaires are in one group, which is the Khazarian Mafia, and they get a tax off of every kilo that is distributed from the South America all the way north, no matter where it's going. So all the biggest loads on this planet, the billionaires know where they are, when they're moving, and they basically make sure they don't get stopped. Because once the flow of drugs stops, the money stops flowing to all these billionaires. And I know all this probably sounds crazy. And I know it just sounds like wildly insane. But this is what all of my research over the years has led me to. Is that there's a group of billionaires who are running every little thing that happens in our realm. Whether it be political, medical, biological, environmental, it doesn't matter. They have a foothold in it, and most of the time are the ones are making it happen, okay? So continuing on, they are the producers, the directors, the main actors of our realm. There are a few cultures that aren't fully controlled by them. Very, very few cultures, guys. The only countries I would say on Earth right now that aren't completely controlled by the KM would have to be North Korea, Iran, possibly Lebanon, and what would be what's the other one? I'm trying to remember what the other one is. And somewhat Namibia. I know a lot of people don't know where Namibia is. Namibia is a very, very beautiful country in Africa. Okay? And there's tribes there that still live without electricity, without running water. And it's really, really cool. Just, if you get a chance, I'll do a project on this now that I think about it. The tribes of Namibia are just like the most beautiful, most spiritual, most inclined with the earth people I've ever seen. Okay? Like, just awesome people. Alright? Now, continuing on. They are the producers, the KM. They are the producers, the directors, and the main actors of our realm. As I've already said that, my bad. And they pretty much, they control the earth and beyond. And everything is affected by them to the most extreme degrees possible. They control most of every continent. They're the smartest, most brutal people you could ever imagine, okay? Now, David Icke had a perfect quote to describe the KM, okay? Never ask yourself what you would do to try to figure out what they would do, because it's not the same thing, okay? David Icke. Now, this was from a speech that David Icke gave to a reporter talking about the New World Order, and he was explaining that Russia was going to invade Crimea right before it happened. Alright? This was an interview in 2014. Alright? It was either when it was happening or right before it was happening. David Icke gave this interview. Alright? And this was one of the famous quotes from that interview. Okay? Babylonian money magic. Babylonian money magic is how the Khazarian Mafia convinces everyone that a piece of paper that's not even good to write on, not really good for anything, is worth more than life itself for a lot of people. They have convinced us to work ourselves to death for a bunch of paper because they say it's worth it. That's what you call total control or Babylonian money magic. In a future episode, I will go over this more in depth. Okay, so basically in short terms, Babylonian money magic is pretty much, they have, through sorcery, in my opinion only, through sorcery, which is real magic, they have convinced the whole world that a piece of paper should be the bargaining chips of every individual on the planet. Okay? And you're probably wondering, why a piece of paper? Like, why would a piece of paper be the thing they make into currency? And I'll tell you why. Okay? It's very easy to print. When they need to really F with things, they can print a whole bunch of it really, really fast, and no one will know until it's too late and everything's overinflated. That's the one thing about paper money, is they can produce it really quick with really fast printers, and they can just flood a country with currency and just make the value just plummet. And that's the thing too, is they have control over all the currencies on Earth. Pretty much all the currencies. Okay? So there's no currency on our Earth that hasn't been affected by the KM. Okay? Religion. They have also, in my opinion, created all of our modern religions. Notice how almost all religions except Judaism have you worshiping another man. Okay? So Christianity, a man has to worship another man named Jesus. In Islam, a man has to worship another man named Muhammad, or their so-called prophet or whatnot. No woman ever, though, even though the women are the creators of life. Seems a little, I'm just going to put G word there because I don't want to get flagged for saying what I was going to write here, but you guys know what I'm saying. It's a little off to set up a whole system in society for men to worship another man and pray to him every day. It's just strange to me, I don't understand, like, how people can think that 2,000 years ago people weren't faking being prophets as they are today. Like, if you notice, like, the Joel Osteens and what's the other guy that looks really demonic? He literally looks like a demon. But they're all these famous, like, preachers and priests. And they're the most money-hungry, absolutely disgusting Khazarian overlords there are. Like, they're the worst of them. And they claim to be prophets. And they claim that God talks through them. And all that. Guys, this has been a scam that's as old as time itself. Okay? I'm not saying all religion's a scam. And this is all my opinion, too, guys. I'm not telling you what to think. I'm telling you how to think. Okay? Just think about it. It's just a little weird, ain't it? The goal. Genocide of the white race through so-called diversity. Diversity equals white genocide. Okay? 2030, one world order, one world communist government. They invented and spreaded communism throughout the world. They were behind the Soviet Union and Chinese and North Korean communism. Transhumanism. Hive mind. Everyone thinking and acting the same, everyone being an NPC. And I need to give a warning also as well, is that if you did get the Fauci ouchie, if you know what I'm saying when I say Fauci ouchie, the thing that they tried to give everybody in 2020, you have been injected with a mini computer, okay, that is extremely complex and small, that is now connected to your biogenetic system and your biofield. So there is somebody somewhere on a computer that, let's say, Joey is acting up. We don't like what Joey's doing. So we're gonna send this data to this little computer that's flowing around your bloodstream. And we're gonna make Joey really depressed. And we're gonna make Joey have all these awful thoughts. And we're also gonna make Joey, just jump out of a window. Or, hang himself from a tree. Or even better, make him take a thing that goes bang bang and go in a public place and start bang banging the other people in there. That's how evil these people are. And that's how powerful these little computers that came with those injections are. Alright? And I know that sounds crazy. I know it sounds wild. But there's just too many whistleblowers that are coming out saying, and mind you, the first person I heard ever talk about these mini computers was back in the 90s. There was a guy who came forward. Pretty sure he's dead now, but he came forward. He was, tried to tell the world about these tiny like nanochips that are basically mini computers that he was actually a part of, like, producing and manufacturing. Guys, they were making the COVID thingy since they probably started producing it probably in the early 90s, mid 90s, until 2020. For 30 years, they were producing billions of these injections. They were not produced recently. They've been stashing these things for God knows how many years. Because all this stuff has been planned since the 20s. 1920s. They've been planning this. Alright, next. Hive mind, everyone thinking and acting the same, everyone being an NPC, non-player character. So if you don't have an interior monologue, and you don't have the capability of self-thought and self-action, you are considered an NPC. Okay? And I'm not hating on the NPCs, but I'm just saying, there's some people who are very much NPCs and some people who are obviously not NPCs, and I don't want to say who's who, but it's just a very obvious fact of life. Alright, to destroy Russia completely. They want Russia gone. The Khazarian Mafia, okay? They want Russia absolutely demolished. And to control the West with a communist iron fist. And keep China under control while this is playing out, which it is. Bank of International Settlements. To understand the KM, it's very important to understand banking. The Bank of International Settlements, BIS, is an international financial institution that fosters cooperation among central banks and other official institutions to promote monetary and financial stability. It serves as a bank for central banks, providing them with a platform for dialogue, research, and financial services. Originally created in 1930 to handle reparations from Germany after World War I, it is the bank that owns and controls the central banks that control all the other banks. They are considered an independent country within Basel, Switzerland, with their own laws and borders and a military wing for enforcement, and to protect the bank and the Khazarians that run it. Now, this is all according to Catherine Austin Fitts, whistleblower and former member of Dillon Reed & Co., and the George H.W. Bush administration. So when she worked for Dillon Reed & Co., I believe she was a financial planner and analyst. So she was very, very, very involved in banking. She was also involved in the Bilderberg Group as well. But she recently came out and she's trying to warn the world about what's happening. And she's kind of still on the whole outer space nonsense still, but I mean, I think she knows the truth. But I think that she's afraid to tell everything she really knows because they'll probably just lop her head off. It's kind of crazy because, the Israelis, according to her words, not mine, actually told her that they were going to kill a member of her family if she released a hard copy of this book she wrote exposing all this. That she's an American citizen that worked for the George H.W. Bush administration. That's how powerful the Mossad and Israel are. It doesn't matter who or where you are in the U.S. Israel can do what they want to you, and the U.S. will not do anything about it. Because she tried to get protection from the U.S., and the U.S. was like, yeah, you're on your own. Sad. They fund both sides of most wars. They control who usually wins. They control economies. They control weather. Your money is going to be worth more or less tomorrow. They control everything to do with money. Whether your money is going to be worth or less tomorrow is controlled by them. Try to create your own currency, you'll end up getting Gaddafi. What happened to Muammar Gaddafi? One of my favorite world leaders. He was a great, very inspirational person. He did not agree with the Khazarian mafia, and he decided to stand up to them. And they destroyed his whole country and his people. And you know there's actually a slave trade in Libya right now that is open air marketed, which means that it's not even... So there's a slave trade everywhere, but you can't go to any country in the world and just buy 20 slaves from a store that literally just sells slaves. But you can do that in Libya, though. In Libya, you can just buy a bunch of people that are chained up for labor. And we're not even talking about just sex slavery, guys. We're talking about labor slavery, sex slavery. Gosh, what are the other types of slavery? There's also, gosh, dang it, it's skipping me right now. There's like telepathic slaves too. Like people who are naturally gifted with telepathy and things like that, and they get kidnapped. And they get taken by all these military contractors and experimented on. That's another form of slavery. There's a very good TV show out right now that is very on point about this subject. It's called The Institute on Amazon Prime. It's a very, very good show. There's only 3 episodes out currently, but I'm telling you, it's worth the watch. The Institute on Amazon Prime. Give it a watch. Alright, continuing. Rest in peace to Muammar Gaddafi, a man on a mission to save Africa from the Khazarians, and died for it. One of my favorite people of all time. Continuing. Their so-called religion. They hide behind Judaism. They are mostly, but not all, Ashkenazi Jewish individuals. They are the modern-day Israelis. So, most, if not all, of the very high-ranking people in Israel are Khazarians. As far as like military goes, I believe that there is a Khazarian division within the Israeli military that is completely controlled by Khazarians. I believe that's who's fighting in Gaza right now, because just so the evil things that they are doing. I do also believe there are parts of the Israeli military that are more professional and not as demonically evil, that are probably not fully influenced by Khazarian leaders directly. So there's this concept, okay, in the world that a lot of people haven't heard of unless you've studied these things. There's white hat militaries and there's black hat militaries, okay? The U.S. military and the Israeli military are black hat militaries, okay? Which means they are mostly evil. Alright? It's not necessarily the soldiers are evil, but it's the commanders and the generals and everybody who's higher ranking are evil. You gotta remember, the soldiers are only as good as the orders are given. Always remember that. Soldiers are only as good as the orders they are given. You gotta remember, a great example, the Ukraine war currently. How the Ukraine war is literally being fought, okay, is there's the zero line, then on the western side of that zero line, probably about 10 miles from the actual zero line itself, there's a building or a bunker, and within that building or bunker, there's a bunch of guys on a bunch of computers. But there's one guy walking around, looking at everything and making sure everything's in check. And he is the commander of that region, okay? And he is the one who is dictating what the soldiers do on the front, when they do it, how they do it, and if they get what they need to do it. So this guy in a building 10 miles from the zero line is influencing every single event on the zero line, okay? So this war is really being fought by a bunch of people behind a bunch of computer screens controlling a bunch of soldiers on the front. And the soldiers are people, they're not robots. But they're being told what to do by a bunch of people on a bunch of screens, controlling a bunch of drones, overviewing what they're doing. Okay? And the same on the Russian side, too. Okay? And these commanders will never see battle. Okay? They will never... If anything were to happen to them, they'd get blown up by a bomb, which has happened. But they're not going to be shot at or engaged directly from the ground, because they're so far from the front. Okay? That's who's actually fighting the war. Is you have a commander on the west side of the zero line and a commander on the east side of the zero line, and it's those two men going at it with their assets, with their tanks, with their BMPs, with their planes, their helicopters, their soldiers, with their artillery, with their grads. Like, everything they have, they're throwing at one another until one side dies. Then the line moves. Then onward and forward. You know? That's how that war is being fought. Now continuing. Sorry I'm going on these little rants, but I just really want to explain in detail why I'm saying what I'm saying and how I came to those conclusions and good examples of those conclusions. Because I like to have real world receipts for what I'm saying instead of just saying a bunch of things and not breaking it down into a context which anybody could understand. Because it's very important to me that I want somebody who is new to this subject to be able to watch this and understand. And I want veterans of this subject to also watch this and be like, that was a really good presentation. You know, I want all age ranges, all ethnicities. I want people from all over the world to be able to watch this channel and to be able to completely understand what I'm saying and why I'm saying it. But just continuing, I just had to put that out there. Russia invades. Around 965 to 1200 AD, the Russians led a group of nations surrounding Khazaria and invaded it in order to stop the Khazarian crimes against their people, which included kidnapping of their young children and infants for their blood sacrifice ceremonies to Baal. The Khazarian king and his inner court of criminals and murderers came to be known as the Khazarian Mafia by the neighboring countries. The Khazarian leaders had a well-developed spy network through which they obtained prior warning of the invasion and escaped from Khazaria. Sorry about that. They escaped Khazaria they basically escaped Khazaria. They went to Bohemia and Bavaria, and they brought all their gold and silver with them. They kept all their wealth, and with their wealth, when they keep their wealth, they keep their power. That's how they keep power over us, okay, is because they control all the money. They literally invented the money, you know? So it's pretty easy to control the money when it's something that you invented yourself, if you get what I'm saying. Alright, continuing. After invasion, the Khazarian king and his court mafia plotted eternal revenge against the Russians and the surrounding nations that invaded Khazaria and drove them from power. They laid low and regrouped while assuming new identities in secret. They continued their satanic child blood and sacrifice rituals and trusted Baal to give them the whole world and all of his riches as they claimed he had promised them, as long as they kept bleeding out and sacrificing children and infants to him. That's how sick these people are, okay? Just absolutely horrible people. You know, and this is not like an over-exaggeration, guys. This is literally putting it nicely, what they're doing to people. Okay? This is actually putting it in the softest terms I could for this presentation, but also putting it in a way that you'd be able to understand what I'm saying and the extent this is going on. This is just, you know, the Epstein list is literally not even 1% of the iceberg of just child trafficking and child exploitation. Okay? That industry, and it is an industry. It is an industrial complex like any other. Okay? It's a huge part of our world, but it is also the least seen part of our world. Okay? And our generation has to fix this problem. We have to. Because to be honest with you, like, I am so terrified of having children, just knowing what I know. I am terrified of even having kids. Because I know that the KM, day and night, are out there kidnapping children. Day and night. And this is not just me saying this either. I know. Okay? I've had enough life experience to know, and things I've seen that, have shown me that this stuff is very real, guys. It's very, very, very real. And it's not something that anyone should shy away from. It is not something that somebody should say, oh, it's not affecting me, so it's not my problem. It is all of our problem. Okay? Every time a child is yanked off the street in this country, it is on every single one of us to do whatever is in our power to either alert the non-Khazarian authorities to help handle that problem if we see something related to it, or if the situation presents itself where you are in the vicinity of a child being abducted or trafficked, you are responsible for doing something to help that child. Okay? There is no being an innocent bystander anymore. That's dead. Being an innocent bystander to a crime against children is dead. Okay? There is no innocent bystanders anymore. You're either part of the problem or you're part of the solution. And I would fucking choose wisely on what part you are. 'Cause soon, people like me, and thank God some other people like me, we've just had enough. We've had enough of this. And by 2030, I'm telling you, there will be a war that either overtakes the North American continent or there will be a one world order. There will not be any other way. I give you my word on that. Sorry, this subject makes me very, very emotional. And I am sorry for ranting, but it just sucks. It just freaking sucks. Anyway, continuing on. Bohemia, using Bavaria/Bohemia, where my family's from, as a springboard. The Rothschild family of the Red Shield or of the Rock, launched a campaign to take over Europe using banking as their weapon. Babylonian money magic at its finest. The takeover of Europe. First, the KM take over the royal family of England. First, and set up banks. Then after that, they do this throughout all of Western Europe. Second, they use Europe as a springboard to take the Rothschild banking system to the rest of the world by any means necessary. Once they had a decent amount of control by the late 1800s and early 1900s, they now shift their focus to Russia. Because remember, around the 1200s, Russia overthrew Khazaria. The Khazarians waited 800 years to enact their revenge. 800 years. Oh, and by the way, these people don't live and die like we do, too. I can't believe I left that part out. They can actually take their consciousness and have it transported into another body. Okay? And this is a tale as old as time itself. There was the halls of Amenti in Egypt that Thoth used to use. Because every time the body he would occupy got too old, he would have his consciousness transported into another body that was grown in the halls of Amenti, under the pyramids, supposedly. Okay, and I've seen a lot of evidence that makes me believe that the Hall of Amenti was a real thing. And as well, too, that there's companies today that are even, I can't remember the name of the one company, but they had a really clever commercial where they were saying for how many hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, I forgot what the number was, that they could transform your consciousness to another body once your body starts to get old or gets messed up or something like that. So guys, this has been around for thousands of years. These people have been around forever. These Khazarians, okay, they're so old. The higher ranking ones are so old that they've seen everything. Okay? That's why they're so smart. That's why they are so intelligent. Is because if you live for over 200 or 300 years, I'm 26, about to be 27, okay? And the amount of knowledge I have accumulated over 27 years has been really too much for my own good. But I can't imagine how much knowledge I'm going to have by the time I'm 50, or by the time I'm 60, or even by the time I'm 30. You know? And like just thinking about living 1,000 years, just how much you would realize and how much you'd understand, especially because these people have access to books and documents and data that us civilians will never have access to, ever. They have access to the truth, and that is also their weapon. It's because they can control what you think is the truth while they know the real truth. And that's why they have been able to control us for so long, is because they create our truth. And they also create our reality, which creates our truth, which creates our beliefs, which creates our morals, which creates how we do things, which creates what we do, which just creates a whole system of nonsense which we're stuck in. That's why I even made this channel. But anyway, continuing. Sorry, I keep ranting. But where was I at? Yeah, once they had a decent amount of control, and by the late 1800s, early 1900s, they now shift their focus to Russia after taking over Wall Street in the United States. So they took over Wall Street around 1903 was when they took over Wall Street. Don't quote me on that date, but I'm pretty sure it was around that date. Because in 1913, they established the Federal Reserve. Okay, but in 1918, they infiltrated Russia with the support of the United States and took the imperial royal family on July 18th. They woke them up out of their sleep and told them to get dressed and told them to go down to the basement for a group photo, which is when they knew they were doomed. They shot Nicholas, the Tsar of Russia at that time, first. The rest of the family also was shot, then stabbed. The ones who were still breathing, along with family doctor and 3 servants and the dog, were also killed. Okay, and sorry for my typos here. I was typing extremely fast. My bad. The Russian Revolution. I really love this picture because it shows Lenin, Stalin, Karl Marx, and I can't remember his name, and I'm not sure who she is. But I thought this was just a perfect picture for it, you know, and you got the hammer and sickle, which the hammer and sickle is a really interesting, it's a really interesting thing because it's supposed to represent the working class, because only the working class use hammers and sickles, usually, you know. It's supposed to represent the people, which it was really just representing the elites, and the star above the hammer and sickle, you know, to represent the divine above the peasant, I would assume. The Russian Civil War. The Red Army led by Leon Trotsky. That Leon Trotsky is this guy. That's Leon Trotsky right there. That's his name. Alright, the Red Army led by Leon Trotsky fought against the White Army led by Yudenich, Kolchak, Denikin, and Wrangel. All had different segments of the White Army which controlled different regions, and with different ideology which led to their defeat. Then there was also the Green Armies, who were more of farmers who got in groups, and a lot of the times allegedly fought both sides in some instances. Absolutely horrible war, by the way. Okay? I'm talking artillery being used against both sides. Tanks weren't really too prevalent at this time. But, just a lot of death and destruction all over the country. But that would get a whole lot worse in 1917. The Red Terror. Between 1917 and 1957, Zionist Khazarian Bolsheviks killed over 60 million Christians. And I'm talking, I think the number is actually closer to 70 million, but absolutely 100% confirmed beyond the shadow of a doubt is 60 million. But I believe it's upwards of over 70. Okay, because you guys got to remember, a lot of these people who were killed are still in mass graves that have never been found. So getting the number 60 million is a very generous number to the Zionists. Okay, that's giving them the benefit of the doubt. That's literally making it look like the Zionists killed less than 66 million using 60 million, when really they actually killed probably 70 to 75 million, if you include the people who were never found. Okay? So they killed over 60 million Christians, the biggest genocide in all of known history. After conquering Russia, the Red Army killed all non-Jewish freethinkers, artists, builders, anyone that was part of any religious group, but left the rabbis and synagogues alone. The Red Army went into the countrysides to take the wheat, the weapons, any crops by the barrel. So all the ethnic Russians would starve, and if you knew how to farm, how to hunt, how to survive, they would kill you because they knew you could survive the famine. They killed everybody, guys. I've seen videos and pictures of real footage of roads, just literally just with bodies, like it's just as far as you can see, and you can tell the difference between the bodies too. You can tell who starved to death and who was shot, and who was beaten to death, and who have died from other means. Like, it's just horrific, man. Like, the amount of just horror that I've seen through videos and pictures throughout this research is just, God, it was god-awful. Some of the hardest research I've done by far, for sure. It's just the amount of brutality that has been documented from the Red Terror is just... If God was watching over the Red Terror, which I'm sure he was, I just wonder how on earth he let it happen. That's how bad it was. It's Nazino Gulag. Nazino is a famous gulag which is on an island, okay? And the island of Nazino Gulag. The island of Nazino was a place in Russia where any newcomers to that island were eaten by the starving inhabitants. When people noticed someone, when people noticed someone someone getting weak, they would wait with them till the moment they stopped breathing. Then immediately they would chop them up and eat them. They say that... Hold up, sorry, I gotta grab my charger from my laptop. They would chop them up and eat them. They say that the water around the island, which I've seen pictures, but they're all black and white, was full of whatever parts couldn't be eaten. And cannibalism was a huge problem throughout Russia. Kids were being kidnapped and eaten so much that they couldn't be let out of the house in many areas because they wouldn't last long at all. Like, literally, guys, let me put this into context. So there was people who were starving, okay? And they would be starving so badly, they would wait. They would wait outside of a house where they knew there was children in that house. And they would wait for the mom to either not be watching the children and the children to wander off, or the children to go outside and play, or the children to do whatever outside the house, and they would wait. and they would literally snatch the children and immediately start chopping them up and eating them. Immediately. Like, I don't even know if there's this one horror story from Zeno, okay, that was a very famous case where this woman there was this communist guard at this gulag, okay? And this guard protected this woman in the gulag that was very attractive, and he had a sexual relationship with her. And he had to leave for one day, okay? And the only reason she hadn't been eaten by the rest of the inhabitants at Nazino, because, like, let me remind you, she's being fed by this guard too. So she's eating well, while everyone else is literally starving to death, okay? So they all wanted to kill her and eat her, but they couldn't because of this guard that was protecting her. This guard took off one day of work, and he told his comrades, people that he's worked with for years, hey, protect her, watch over her no matter what, do not let anything happen to her. The moment that guard left the gulag and went on to do whatever he needed to do, I'm pretty sure he was called back to Moscow for something, as that's what the story says, to meet with somebody in the higher up government. But they took this woman, tied her to a tree while she's still alive. They hacked her apart while she's still alive and started eating her alive. And you're probably wondering, why didn't they kill her before they started hacking at her? Because the meat would spoil faster if she was dead. So they kept her alive when gutting her. Or not, they didn't really gut her. What they did is they took her cheeks off, her butt cheeks. They took her calves off, her thighs off, her her triceps, biceps, her breasts, and that's basically like all the parts that they went for first. By the time that guard had gotten back the next day, this lady somehow was still alive. Okay, because you gotta remember, is when these people are hacking her apart, they're hacking one piece of her off at a time, and they're trying to keep her alive as long as possible so the meat stays good as long as possible. Okay? So they probably hacked part of her off, ate it, hacked another piece, ate it, hacked another piece, ate it. And by the time the guard had gotten back, she had lost so much blood that he couldn't save her. And it just was, one of those stark realities that the KM created for these people. Can you imagine being so starving you're hacking a woman apart that's alive and eating her? Can you imagine being that starving? Like, can you even begin to comprehend that level of starvation? You can't. I can't. No one I don't believe anybody in the United States can. Okay? I went hungry. I went without food. But I have never been so hungry that I thought about hacking another human being apart and eating them. I have never been that hungry, ever. Not even close. I haven't even met, some of my friends from the Middle East and some of my friends from Eastern Europe that grew up poor, that, they've never had to do anything like that. Or even not even close. So, like, that grim reality existed in Russia at that time. And this is everywhere in Russia too, guys. This is everywhere in Russia this is happening. Well, really outside of the urban centers. So in the urban centers where the elites are, there is food there. But in the countrysides, though, they're getting robbed of all their food every time they grow it. So it's just they're not able to keep any wheat, keep any corn, keep any beans, keep anything for themselves, really. They have to try. That's the thing too, is a lot of the farmers, were fed up with it, and they started to make stashes of food, but they would hide from the KM, and basically they hide from the KGB, which are just really a part of the KM. I mean, they're not really that much different. Okay, and what had happened is when the Russian intelligence, the KGB, or God, what was it called at that time? The God, it was the U something. But anyway, when the Russian communists would go out to the countrysides and collect the grain and everything, they would literally look at the farmers, and if the farmers weren't extremely skinny, they would suspect that they've been hiding and eating the food that they're supposed to be growing specifically for the elites, and they would usually just kill them. So you're not only worried about dying from starvation, you're worried about getting killed for starving. For not starving, if you get what I'm saying, okay? Sorry I'm kind of sloppy today with my presentation. I'm just really tired, and I just want to make sure I got this video out today. My bad. It's like 3 in the morning when I'm filming this, so you guys know. Alright, continuing on. This is a quote by Leon Trotsky, the guy I showed you with the cover picture on the left hand side. He's a Zionist founder of the Red Army. Gosh dang it. His quote: "You are starving. This is not famine yet. When your women start eating their children, then you may come and say, we are starving." That is Leon Trotsky's quote. Okay? He was a member of the KM. A very, very high-ranking Tsarist Mafia member. Out of all of Russia, there were 12 main gulags that killed more than 10 million people. 11 out of 12 gulags were ran by Zionist administrators. There was only one gulag that was actually ran by a Russian. There was only one. That's it. All the other gulags were ran by the KM directly. World War I. Germany fought with Austria against the French, British, which took horrible losses. The French and the British did. Once Britain was on its back foot and the French were decimated, the Zionists, through coercion in Germany and the rest of the world, got America into the war, as well as the Balfour Declaration, gave the Zionists in the U.S. Palestine, and the Zionists in Eastern Europe Palestine. Then, as agreed, they pushed the U.S. into the war on Britain's side. Casualties were immense. Then Zionists in Germany turned on Germany, and they made their army surrender. Guys, when Germany surrendered, they weren't close to defeat. The Germans were rocking our shit. And the Brits, and the French. They were fucking destroying us on the front line, okay? My great-grandpa fought in World War I. Okay? I'm telling you right now that the Germans, they freaking effed us up on the front. Okay? The people think through propaganda and video games that the Germans weren't good soldiers. I have fucking newsflash. Excuse my language. They were the best in the world, by far. So they were made to surrender when they were far from being defeated because they were winning. And the only way to defeat Germany was coercing Germany. The only way to defeat Germany was corruption. That was the only way to do it. The Treaty of Versailles. The treaty made Germany pay the Zionists through the formation of the Bank of International Settlements. And as a result, millions of Germans starved and died while Germany was being destroyed from within. The German mark. The German mark became worthless because the Germans had to give all their gold that was backing the mark for reparations, and inflation spiraled wildly out of control. At one point, it took an entire wheelbarrow of marks for bread, 2 billion, or 2 trillion for butter. I can't remember the number. while Zionists were still eating lobster, across the street where Germans were eating rats. There's a, I can't remember what street it was on in Berlin, but there was a upper class restaurant. Across the street was a vendor selling cooked rats. Across the street from Zionists eating lobster. There was a really famous picture. There was a picture of the guy he was eating his food, a Zionist, real fat guy. And you can see behind him, you can see the market where they're selling the cooked rats, and you see all the poor people lining up. It's just wild. Just a wild picture, just showing how the world really is, you know. Communist Revolution. 1919, there was an attempted communist revolution, which was shut down by the Germans. Also, same year, communist revolution in Hungary, that was also shut down. After the Hungarians fought back quick and stomped out the Bolsheviks. The rise of Adolf Hitler. Adolf was homeless in Vienna, Austria, most of his life. And he was very good with art and tried to get accepted into the Jewish-ran art schools in the area. They all rejected him. Even though his artwork was actually very good, this is one of Adolf's pictures that he painted. He was very good. He loved painting old world buildings. Okay, because this is buildings from the previous civilization. Adolf knew that too. I guarantee he did. That's probably why he painted them. They're just such beautiful buildings. You know, World War I. In World War I, Adolf fights for Austria originally, then joins the German army where he is awarded the Military Cross, Iron Cross, Second Class, Iron Cross, First Class, and 6 medals for bravery. He also, in 1916, he was wounded, healed up within 2 months, and he could have stayed home but demanded to be sent back to the front. He gets his wish. Then in 1918, he was wounded again by a British poison gas attack. That really messed up his eyes. He had to wear a bandage over his eyes for a while because he couldn't handle the light. Just absolutely horrifying stuff. So after the war, he comes back to a shattered Germany, and he's in Munich, and he's just trying to live his life, but he realizes something's wrong. Something is wrong. Germany doesn't deserve this. Shouldn't be going through this, and it needs to be stopped. And I'm telling you right now, Hitler put the pedal to the metal and put his feet to the concrete, and he put in work, and he started making things happen, whether people liked it or not. And I have to respect the man, because the thing about what you'll learn about in this presentation as it goes on is Adolf is not who we were told he was, for sure. He's not who the Zionists have portrayed him as, but he is a man who stands for and with the white nationality. He stands for white people with white people, and that's what he was all about. But he was also all about the Muslims being for Muslims, and the Jews being for Jews, and the Africans being for Africans, and the Moors being for Moors, and the Asians being for Asians, and the Tibetans being for Tibetans, and the Gurkhas being for Gurkhas. Like, I could go on with, the Cossacks being for Cossacks, just like the Slavs being for Slavs. He's all about that. He's all about, if you're this race, you must breed with that race. Well, you should breed with your race, and you should stand up for your race and better your race, and you should wish that for every other race as well. There is no room for racism, but there is also no room for forced inclusion. Period. If I want a white child from a white mother, that's what I will have. If I want to have a child with a woman of another race, that is my choice, but that is not Muhammad Ali had a very famous quote. He's like, he was talking to this Zionist, and he just destroyed him. He was like, the bluebirds go with the bluebirds, the redbirds go with the redbirds, the pigeons go with the pigeons. You don't ever see a red bird mate with a blue bird, do you? The quote went something like that. I should have put the exact quote in here, but anyhow, it was one of really famous Muhammad Ali's most famous quotes, and that's what I believe in too. I believe white people should be with white people, and Africans should be with Africans, and Muslims should be with Muslims, and that's just what I believe. Just because I know in my heart why this country's a melting pot the way it is, it's because of the KM. They literally created the word diversity. They literally created the trans movement. They created the gay movement. Towards the end of this presentation, I'll get into that. But anyway, continuing. Munich, the start of the German Nationalist Party by Adolf and Rudolf Hess, was started in 1920. Rudolf Hess was another really brave person. That was one brave mother effer, I'll tell you. Just like the things Rudolf did to keep the peace before the war and during the war is just freaking tough, dude. Tough, dude. He was always by Adolf's side, though. Through everything. So, it started in 1920 after much hardship and conflict with the communists, where Hitler actually got shot and imprisoned with Rudolf Hess. The judge during Hitler's trial liked his speech so much, he was given a lenient sentence along with Rudolf Hess. Hitler's speech saved Adolf and Rudolf. Okay? Because he gave the speech to the judge. And the judge was just like shell-shocked. And the judge just didn't have the heart to sentence him for long term. Because he knew Adolf was right. Continuing. 1933, Hitler takes power. Hitler takes power, drags Germany up by the bootstraps, fixes the economy, helped the poor, removed and arrested some of the Jewish bankers, including a Rothschild, which he held for a ransom of $21 billion. The highest ransom ever for a person in recorded history. Okay? He cleaned the streets of pedophiles and Jewish trans pedo ideology. He removed the devil from Germany and opened the door for the Lord to come back to the German people. He restored gun rights. Anyone in Germany could own a gun. Shortly, Germany became the best country in the world for living conditions. Hitler literally saved Germany. He built the Autobahn using only German materials and German workers. Porsche, along with Adolf Hitler, created a car that anyone could afford at 995 marks called the Volkswagen. That's a really interesting one too. Adolf was like, everybody should have a car. Just an idea of his, everybody should have an automobile. Because you gotta remember, at this time, not everyone had a car. Okay, this is early 1930s. Not everyone has an automobile. It's not like today. And still today, there's a crazy statistic. Out of the 8 billion people in our realm, only 3 billion of them drive a car. 3 billion out of 8 drive a car. Think about that. If you have a car, you are in the top 50% echelon of society. Just think about that. If you just owning a car makes you more, what's the right word for it? Basically, you're in a higher bracket of society if you own a car than half of the world's population. Just by owning a car. That's it. Just crazy statistic. Hitler took Germany back and saved his country from total collapse. Continuing. Now this is the end. To be continued. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. We will continue on with the next segment will be the Zionists declare war on Germany in 1933, and we will continue from there. This is going to be a multi-part series, guys. I can't put all of this in one video just because of the fact that in order for me to be able to do this the right way, I have to pick and choose certain portions of the presentation and stop and break that subject down into multiple little pieces to make the puzzle look right. You get what I'm saying? If you just take a bunch of random pieces of a puzzle and rearrange them in a random order, the puzzle's not going to look good. Now, if you take every little piece of that puzzle and you make sure it goes in the right place at the right time for the right reason, at the end, you're going to have the most beautiful puzzle you've ever seen that you want to hang up on your wall for generations to come. You know? Just thought to think about. Anywho, please like and subscribe, and remember, criticism is always encouraged by me. I love being criticized. I love people telling me what I can do better. The only way we grow as human beings is to be criticized. So thank you very much, and have a good day.